changed seats again.
Episode 4.
Episode 4. Hi guys, welcome back to the Black Iron Brothers podcast. We are leaning in. This is because we care a lot.
We're serious.
Look how much we're leaning in.
We were too relaxed last time.
We were too relaxed.
Too relaxed.
Anyway, we're going to be talking about macronutrients today.
That's at the end where we have to lean back.
Yeah, stay in. Stay leaning forward. So we're going to be talking about macronutrients today. So we're going to be talking about protein, carbs, fats. A lot of misconceptions and myths around this. So we are going to be going over that a little bit as well today.
Break up all the stuff that you'd want to know. Yeah, it's like nice, simple, easy stuff that a lot of people ask questions about. And you hear all the time. We're just going to reveal it essentially.
Yeah. So the first thing that we want to go over is satiety. So this is a hugely important element of your diet. Is what makes
adherence. This is basically
adherence. So like satiety just basically means like what makes you feel full.
Not raiding the biscuit cupboard at 4 a.m.
because you're starving because you've been only eating Ryvitas. It's about like
Ryvita life.
Ryvita life.
That sounds like a
brand,
almost like a Weight Watchers thing.
Yeah, Ryvita
not
life.
Good. Don't do Weight Watchers. But Ryvita life, we're gonna start. Yeah, it's gonna be
that's gonna be our program.
It's gonna be a combination of Weight Watchers and Herbalife.
This was supposed to be a really short podcast, and I can already feel that this is going to be long.
Right, satiety scale.
Yeah.
Continue.
So, the order of that scale basically goes protein, then carbs, and then fats. That basically means from what makes you feel the fullest to what makes you feel the least full.
Yeah. You could probably throw in fibrous carbs just behind protein there. Yeah.
And this is why we always advocate having sufficient protein in your diet, is because having enough protein is always going to make you feel fuller. You're always going to, not wanting to eat more, because if you've had, a good amount of meat in your meal or whatever your form of protein is, often you're not going to want to eat loads more because you're like, oh my God, I've just had loads of food.
You don't see people eating like 17 steaks.
Yeah.
But you do sometimes see people eating like 25 bags of crisps.
Yeah, it's easy with things like pasta and rice and stuff like that. It's so easy to overindulge with these things.
And if you get the combination right, so this is a tangent, but the least satiating foods you can possibly have, and this is what your treats market has monopolized, is 50% carbs, 50% fat.
Yeah.
Why do you think donuts are so good?
Oh,
and when you have a bad
good.
donut, it's because it's like 75%
the ratios
sugar,
are off.
25% fat. If it's bang on, you've even done it in studies of mice.
Yeah.
They will just keep eating.
Yeah, because it's basically just hitting that receptor in your brain for your brain to just keep telling you to eat it.
You just get so hungry.
So, with protein, basically it's going to be 4 calories per gram. We have mentioned this before, I think, in a previous podcast, but we did want to just briefly go over that again.
But this is the scale.
Yeah, so
the calorie scale.
Again, so protein, 4 calories per gram, which means it's not very high density as far as the amount of calories that it provides, but it actually makes you feel very full. So this is again why it's a really good option to be having a good amount of protein in your diet. Then fats,
carbs.
Sorry, carbs as well. So carbs as well.
Well, carbs and protein are 4 calories, and fats are 9 calories per gram.
I feel like either you're always picking up a glass or I'm always picking up a glass.
It's the habit of I must quench my thirst.
So, the next thing was thermic effective food, and I think you wanted to go over that a little bit.
So sort of what he was going over there, so you've got when you think about your protein, you've got your 4 calories, which is relatively low per gram, and that's the most satiating. So we tie that even more, so another level up would be the thermic effective food. Now that sounds complicated, but all that essentially is of those 4 calories that you get from 1 gram of protein, let's use that as the example. For protein, 25% of those calories, so 1, will be used in assimilating that gram of protein. Yeah, so you're realistically like absorbing like 3 grams in theory. Now it doesn't always work out exactly perfectly. And then if you look at the scale as it goes down, it will be then carbohydrates, which is like 5 to 10 typically. Now it can always vary depending on how processed it is and all things like that. And then fats is typically like 0 to 3%. Yeah, and then again, like when we mentioned that little subcategory of like fibrous carbohydrates, so you're like more like vegetables, like fibrous vegetables, less so much fruit, but certain parts of fruit, it's going to be again that 25%. Yeah, so if you've got 4 calories from sort of a fibrous carbohydrate, 1 gram of that, you'd only absorb about 3. It's a little bit of a tangent, but it's a nice. I wouldn't rely on it massively, but it's a nice little thing to know that when you start to shift your macros into a certain dynamic with higher protein, higher vegetables, which we all know we should probably be doing.
Yeah. And also,
absorbing
again,
less
if we're
calories.
talking about satiating foods, not necessarily the vegetables are super satiating, but because they're so low calorie, they use up more space in your
It's
gut.
got a lot of volume.
Yeah, there's a lot of volume in your stomach, so you feel fuller when you're eating vegetables. That's why it tends to be a good option.
So that's thermic effect of food.
You don't have to go overboard with vegetables and fruit as well.
Yeah.
There are some people who have GI issues because of that.
Too much fibre.
Yeah, too much fibre.
There's
can
different
be
sources you have that have less fibre.
Yeah, so there are different sources, and you don't have to have, fruit and veg that is upsetting your stomach and is inflammatory for your stomach.
Each person is different.
Each person is different.
Tolerate.
Yeah, exactly. Find what works for you as far as veg. But it's definitely good if you're on a lower calorie diet to have that extra veg so that you feel fuller as well.
And all of the micronutrients, phytochemicals, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So basically, just to go over the function of these different macronutrients, protein is really there to, most importantly, build muscle, build tissue. It's basically really vital for rebuilding all of the tissue in not just our skin, but also our organs, our muscle, everything. So protein is super important for
growth,
that. Growth and repair, all that stuff.
That kind of stuff. Carbs and fats, loosely, is essentially energy and helps with regulating your hormonal profiles. Yeah, so you can go into details of that, but that's essentially what they do. Yeah.
But something that we can go over here as well is Neo-Glucogenesis. So this is something that you can definitely mention here as well. That protein isn't necessarily a form of energy, but if you're having insufficient amounts of carbs and fats and enough or even too much protein, your body does something that's called Neo-Glucogenesis, which is basically making glucose out of the protein in your system, and that's basically going to allow your system to keep on using that protein as a form of energy, even though that's not what it is typically
keto people
used
are
for.
terrified of.
Terrified. Yeah.
Terrified of Neo-Glucogenesis.
They don't want that.
Terrified. Just eat 1 gram of protein a day.
And we don't. Obviously, we're not going to go too much into depth with what the different diets are and stuff like that. But keto basically is going to be higher fat, lower protein. Well, kind of some protein, but not a lot of protein, and very low carb.
Depends on how extreme they're going with it. Yeah. The extreme sort of zealots of that side would say you got to keep your protein really, really low because Neo-Glucogenesis.
Yeah. And that's not to any keto zealots out there. It's not terrible keto. It can work for some. Definitely can work for some.
For epilepsy.
But it's just it can be really useful. I know people who are on keto because they have epilepsy and it works for them. But it's definitely not just a cure-all for everything. Yeah. Like it is.
And you probably want to keep your protein pretty high. That's the only issue with that one is that they tend to go on the lower end.
Yeah, they're always and then it's going to be tougher definitely to build muscle on that. Yeah. So that kind of brings us into our fads, myths, misconceptions, and all that kind of stuff. We have quite a few of them today because this is kind of going to be the main portion of this episode. Is going to be talking about.
It might be. You never know.
Well, it might be 2 minutes long. It might be very, very short. We'll see.
Be very concise.
But we do have a few things to mention here. The first one that I wanted to go over, and that I hear a lot of people talking about that don't really know enough about nutrition, is that too much protein is bad for you, or it's bad for your kidneys, or it's bad for your liver.
Yeah.
No evidence
Toxic.
suggests that whatsoever. There's no evidence whatsoever that it impairs your renal function in any way. There's no evidence at all that it affects your kidneys or liver negatively.
It's fear-mongering, really.
Yeah, and it's kind of based on pseudoscience around what protein does in the body. And it's very, very important to have protein in your system. If you're trying to build muscle, you need protein. So to say too much protein is kind of giving protein a bad rap, when in actual fact it's so massively important
it's
for
the
most
building
people.
Block. It's your resources that you need. Yeah. If you're low on resources, you can't achieve the same sort of supply.
Indeed. Next.
So let's go into. You can cover the other one, but I'm going to go into your ratio of carbs and fat. Right. So people are often really, really concerned when they're looking at their macros. They start getting into it and they start thinking right, okay, so I need this set amount of protein. Cool. Well, what do I have for my carbs and fat? Should I have the keto people? Right, maybe I should have really high fat and really low carb because it's bad either way. The reality is that the ratio you have day to day of your carbohydrates makes very little difference on body fat loss. Yeah. Now, obviously, if people have certain medical conditions and things like that, they may need to take into account the ratios that they do use. But for sort of everyday sort of layman's people, normal people here, regular folk,
Gen Pop,
it doesn't make a difference. Yeah. So don't stress about needing to have an exact figure here of carbs and fat. So like you accidentally ate an extra grain of rice and now you can't eat anything with carbs in whatsoever. So now you're just drinking oil for the rest of the day to fill out the rest of your calories. Yeah. It's not.
It kind of needlessly overcomplicates things to worry too much about your carb or fat.
A bit like my explanation there.
Yeah, I mean, just think. I'm trying to re-explain it again, reiterating
really long, really verbose explanation saying the same thing 15 times. You don't need to worry about how many carbs and fat you're eating each day. You can have variety.
But here is the thing that we haven't really gone over too much, and we have mentioned this as well in previous episodes, is how important getting your protein intake is. Yeah. The right protein intake. So, you know, again, when we were talking about it being bad for your kidney, for your liver or whatever with protein, they've tested in studies up to 2.8 grams per kilogram of body weight, and there was no adverse effects on the kidney. So what that means is, like, for me, that would be over 320 grams of protein or something, which is tons, and really not that necessary, but it also didn't show any actual adverse effects. So getting the protein intake high enough where you're going to be able to build muscle, I'd imagine that we're talking to people here who are in the fitness, you know, interested in fitness and interested in the industry.
Or trying to get into it.
And and trying to learn something. So getting enough protein, definitely massively important, and worrying about the carbs and fats too much is more just going to confuse you, when really you just want to worry about the calories and the protein.
It can limit you massively. Like then you get people that start stressing about like how much fruit they're eating and things like that. It's not something you need to worry about. It's you know, obviously we're not saying eat loads of processed things like Pop-Tarts.
I mean, I know a guy who would count his chewing gum calories.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like, mate.
Most of it's sugar-free. That must have been very...
Yeah, it was...
Zero?
Yeah.
Zero? You just sitting there counting black coffee and chewing gum.
More zero, another zero.
He's got like water, coffee and chewing gum. He's like, I can't make it. I'm never going to get to the calories.
I'm never going to get 2,500 out of this. So the next thing that we wanted to go over is...
He's now dead.
It was that diet of chewing gum,
coffee
and water. Just did him in.
He lasted a few weeks.
3 weeks.
And
then it just and then it came out on him.
He was super energetic though.
Yeah. That caffeine intake with no body fat.
Yeah, he was ready to go. Yeah.
He died wired.
Yeah.
Anyway.
He's never slept.
So the next thing that I wanted to go over here is a lot of people who think that you only need 40 grams of protein.
Yeah.
So you'll
probably heard that myth around.
Yeah, there are lots of, you know, even I find it a little bit embarrassing that our National Health Service, you know, actually, if you look on the NHS and Healthline and stuff like that, it's like, oh, you only need, you know, 40, 50 grams of protein a day. Yes, to survive. If you want to survive, 40, 50 grams of protein a day would probably be enough.
Maybe they're doing it, you know, as like trying to get people to get at least the minimum. They're not trying to overly scare people into how much they need to get.
Maybe.
But it's a little bit of negligence there.
I appreciate you playing devil's advocate there, but I
devil's
think
avocado.
that it's devil's avocado. But I do think that is somewhat misleading, because for the majority of people, they would benefit hugely from having higher protein in their diets.
Yeah.
And
I mean, if you look at the disparity now, so that they're completely disparate. So the number that we would recommend and what science recommends and general fitness community, all this stuff that's basically understood, would be from 0.8 grams to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight. Yeah, of lean body mass. Yeah. But so that's the generic understanding. But now more research is coming out and saying ignore the lean body mass factor and just do it per pound of body weight.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you think about that compared to 40 grams. I mean, how many 40-pound people do you know that aren't children?
not many.
You know?
Yeah.
And kids can eat tons because they're growing, all that kind of stuff. I probably ate the most when I was like 14.
Yeah. And probably they could definitely do with eating a lot more protein as well as they're growing. They
and as a further tangent, the research coming out at the moment now is that older people, as you age, so you get into 40s, 50s, 60s, your protein demands go up
significantly.
Right, you know? So it's this idea that the sort of cliche if you have like a little old person eating hardly anything because they don't need it anymore. It's complete opposite.
Yeah.
They need more than the young people. Yeah.
They need more.
They can go right up there.
And it might be an issue that, you know, maybe their appetite is dropping off.
Yeah, it can get difficult
as you're older, and it's definitely difficult to get those calories in and the protein in as you're getting older. But if you are older, you know, sort of like 50, 60, 70 plus,
and And you're trying to optimize your health.
Yeah, and you're trying to optimize your health and your fitness, then definitely trying to get that protein in is going to make
That's
a huge
always the counter-argument. They say it's not easy, but like being optimal isn't easy.
Yeah, exactly. Being optimal is not easy.
It's just got to take that.
What we do ourselves of eating a lot every day is not particularly easy. Like you have to force a lot of those calories. But you know, if your goal is to get bigger or stronger or whatever or more athletic, then you need to feed yourself. So that's basically it for today. This is a little bit of a short one, but we just wanted to go over a few key points.
There's macros for you.
Yeah, and just explain the basics.
It's actually not a short one.
It's relatively short, I think.
No.
I'm going to check the time afterwards, but I think it was relatively
short.
short. What is the time? Where are you seeing this?
16 minutes 30.
Oh my god, it was so much longer than I thought it was. We're going to have to cut this short somewhere.
This isn't a short one.
Quickly, end it.
This is exactly the same as the other one.
End it now.
And a short one will eventually appear.
I think the last one was like 25 minutes.
That was a too long one.
It was too long.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But this is now, maybe if we keep rambling, we'll get there.
No, let's not get there. Anyway, thank you very much, guys, for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe, like, comment. If you have any questions, if you'd like to see any other topics, please message us, DM us, comment below. All of our details will be below as well.
Yeah, so there's your little macros cheat sheet.
Yeah. So that's basically it, really, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and speak to you soon.
Peace.